So the theme for this month is the universe is made up of stories. For a long time, I quoted Joseph Campbell as saying that, but then I found out it wasn't. Because Andrea Weatherhead works with us, and she knows these things. It was Muriel somebody. Reicherson. Reichhauser. Well, Reichhauser. Muriel. So now, don't ever quote Joseph Campbell. You know better. And if you think about it, really, our universe, the world that we live in, because unfortunately, the ego thinks it is the center of its universe, because that's how we view things, is made up of stories. The stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, and the stories we've been told over and over and over again. The future is shaped by the stories that went on before, the stories that we didn't know enough to say no to. For instance, how many of you, when you were younger, watched movies or TV shows with cowboys and Indians? Who were the good guys? Well, we may know that now. I'm talking about when we were young. When we were 13 years old, watching those shows, who were the good guys? Cowboys. Who were the bad guys? Yeah, that's the way it was, and the cowboys had to win. And also, who was the bad guy in any cowboy show? Black hat. Who was the good cowboy? White hat. I mean, come on. Really? We were being inundated, but that's what they believed, or at least that's what they wanted everybody else to believe. And most likely, the people writing the scripts, that's what they grew up with. And it's only until later that we actually started to investigate things. I went to a Native American museum in the Southwest and had to read about the many tribes that were absolutely annihilated. They exist no more. I come from Cherokee background, so I know about the Tale of Tears, and that there was a Cherokee nation on the East Coast, a nation driven to Oklahoma, which I come from Oklahoma. It's not pretty. I mean, I'm sorry, it's not pretty. And I was so embarrassed to look like a little Indian, because I looked like a little Indian. I was told that I had squinty little Cherokee eyes, which I did. I don't look that way anymore, because as soon as I had the money, I had my eyes fixed. It wasn't really funny. It's what we're told. Who are the good guys? The cowboys. Who are the bad guys? The Indians. That's the story, but see how real the story can become? And we tell our stories about ourselves. My family my two sisters and a brother grew up in the same family I did. I told myself a story about my family, and they told themselves a story about their family. And we have different lives. Same family. When I was told no, I said, oh, well, yeah, right. Not that I disobeyed, but when they was told they didn't have money for clothes, or I didn't have this, I made my own money. It's like, no, you don't stop this girl. My two sisters and a brother, they just stopped. Think about it. The universe, as you know it, is made up of stories. The stories handed down, or the stories that you had to make up, because I'll tell you, when things don't make sense, we try to make meaning. Well, Viktor Frankl wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning. Well, guess what? If we don't make up a meaning that's purposeful and empowering, we will make up another meaning. And that will become our story. But I'm not here to teach history lessons, and I'm not here for us to have a philosophical conversation about human beings' search for meaning. It's really hard for me to use that language anymore, by the way. I mean, I knew when he said man's search for meaning, he meant human beings search for meaning, but human beings search for meaning doesn't have the same cadence as man's search for meaning, but you get what I'm saying, right? Forgive me. Oh, by the way, my name's Kathianne Lewis. For those of you kind of new here, hi, I'm Kathianne, and my pronouns are she and her. Now we're back to this. Anyway. So, and I'm here that we might have our hearts healed and our dreams built. Because I don't have a lot of influence outside of here, but you're here, so I'm here to help you have the life that you want to live. Just to create the container that you can grow in. And everyone that is here today is here for that container, whether the choir knows it or not. I'm not sure what their real intention is, but God's intention for that beautiful music is that we are inspired. Oh, by the way, Danny, you rock. So Danny does the visuals, and the first service he had me against Pink. Well, look at this. You can't put this in front of Pink. And so Danny, good job. I match now. This is so good. Whoa. See, it's all people showing up to create a container that we can drop our troubles and rise up in our magnificence. That's what the music is for. That's why the prayer practitioners get here early and bless all the seats. That's why people love you so much that they got here early to prepare food so that you can have something to snack on when you go downstairs. You think you're going downstairs for a snack? Oh, heck no. God wants you to run into somebody so you meet somebody so that you know that there are people like you in the world. Anyway. So I need to talk about something that I learned from the Ministers' Ongoing Education Conference. I started it many years ago with my friend Mike Baker. And I think we taught ministers, like 20 to 25 ministers. One time we even had 30 for 20 years. That's a lot of ministers. And we did it because ministers are taught, New Thought history, philosophy, all sorts of things except how to run a church. So, exactly. So we thought we'd just fill in. And one of the things that he brought to the conversation is something called the ladder of inference. And those of you that have taken self-mastery, the ladder of inference is in the self-mastery class because of what he brought. And it's like, I'm going to give you an illustration of it, but I find it interesting. Well, let's just give you a ladder. I'm going to skip ahead before I tell you about inference. So the ladder of inference is like this. You see a thing, and then you make stuff up. Because the mind wants everything to be connected. So if you see a thing and you don't know why it happened, you just make up. So let's just say, okay, by the way, I had somebody say, I'm retired, I'm not going to play. But I want you to play a game. Let's just play a game, and it's called We're All Here at Work. So everybody want to play the game You're Here at Work? You're here at work. I'm going to give you a really good assignment. You are in one of the biggest companies in Seattle in a high rise, okay? So, by the way, I'll give you a corner office. You want to play now? Okay? So you're in the corner office in Seattle, and it's a staff meeting. So you all gather in the center with the long table, and who is it? I forgot who it was. Oh, Joe. Joe comes in late. Joe comes in late for the staff meeting. And you remember Joe came in late last month, too. Oh. Joe's always late. Now, all you know is that he came in late today. And he came in late last month when they have a staff meeting. So he's always late. He doesn't even care about this job. He's a slacker. I'm just going to avoid him because I don't hang out with slackers. See how that went up? It's called the ladder of inference. The ladder of inference. We see one thing, and we just go and make a story up about it. Now, I'm doing this talk, and I've worked with the ladder of inference a lot. I decided to look up what inference meant. Sometimes you just let's explore a word. It is a conclusion reached based on evidence and reasoning. Now, what issue might you see in that definition? A conclusion based on evidence and reasoning. And evidence. I mean, think about it. You got to assume the evidence is accurate. And you've got to assume that what people said about the evidence was reasonable. For instance, in Turkey, they have discovered huge monuments dating back at least 10,000 years. That's before the pyramids. And we were told that hunter-gatherers couldn't make or wouldn't make those kind of monuments. They didn't have the time. They're too busy hunting and gathering. Well, they did. Or they weren't hunter-gatherers, or they had time. Do you see, what? And then reasoning. So people couldn't see beyond a certain place, so it became a flat earth. And because the sun came, and I had the sun come up in the north first service, but the sun comes up and it goes down, so obviously it revolves around the earth. That was reasonable. There's a whole lot of issues with inference, especially if you infer that something's faulty. Let's take something else. Last week we talked about don't assume. This was in the 4 agreements. I don't know, there used to be 2 downstairs. There might still be 2 copies downstairs, but the 4 agreements is a good book to have, don't assume. But if you're going to assume, remember that it also said to check things out before you assume. So if whoever we were in our corner office with a view, you get to choose which mountain range you want, and it's a good view. If you had gone and talked to Joe, you would have found out that he takes a ferry to work, and the last few months, and this is true, because of staffing and shortage of boats, he could miss a ferry, or the ferry was just running late. But you would have also found out that he always makes sure to stay late if he gets to work late, because he's so dedicated to his job. Do you see how that works? So we run up that ladder without checking things out. But if we're going to run up the ladder, let's run up the ladder for good. Let's assume good intent. Now, I want to stay with the ladder for a while. Don't make yourself, how many of you have run up the ladder with a family member? How many of you have run up a ladder with a coworker? How many ran up the ladder with the neighbor? I ran up the ladder with the guy that loves to fly the Confederate flag in our neighborhood. Man, he's a nice guy. It's amazing what he does for neighbors. It's amazing. If something happens in the neighborhood, he's there to help. Wow, I fell off that ladder. No, I'm not asking him about the Confederate flag. Don't want to know. But I pigeonholed him, and he refused to stay there. It is human to assume the worst. It is divine to assume the best. I mean, the universe knows we mess up. The universe knows that we try, we fall, we get up, we'll finally get there. But there's days we're just not perfect. And yet that's perfect. It's perfect we're not perfect because we signed up to be human. We signed up to forget our own spiritual strength and our own spiritual background. We signed up because it would be fun. I mean, this is Kathianne speaking. Ernest Holmes didn't say that. I don't know anybody else who said that. This is pure Kathianne. Take it or leave it. Because I've been in places where I've known pre-incarnation, and I've worked with hundreds of people pre-incarnation, and it's basically, I want to go, yeah, I am this. I can't even describe what I am, but I'm going to go play at this. And we go play at it, so let's just assume that this is part of the program. So if we're going to go up the ladder, let's play this way. If at the bottom rung is a problem, how many of you have had problems? Thank you. See, look at how much we have in common. Isn't this lovely? Let's assume in the problem is a solution, and not only a solution, that's one thing, in the problem is a solution. Let's say that in the problem it's not just a solution, there's a blessing. There's a blessing in that issue. Because if it's all God, and God is everywhere present, and God is the presence of goodness, blessing is the recognition of goodness, so there's goodness in that problem. Because God is God all the time. It's not like, either it's all the time. I think it was Einstein who said, thanks, yeah, now you tell me. Okay, Einstein that said, either we believe that there's a God or we don't, or God is good or we don't. It's it's not on and off. Now we go on and off, but God doesn't go on and off. Gravity doesn't go on and off. The sun doesn't go on and off. Good is good all the time. And it's so we get to experience it. It's God doesn't operate at some months. But then there's Mercury in retrograde. And God takes a break. Says you're on your own. I'll be back in about 6 weeks. See what you did. I do love to blame stuff on Mercury in retrograde, but still, it doesn't mean I believe it. Does it make sense? And yet we do that. This is awful. How many of you have been there recently? This is awful. God is in that awful. God is in that awful. A little while ago, there was a problem. I had a problem. I know it's hard to believe. But there was a problem. And it's okay, God, I believe that this has got so much stuff. This is so much stuff that I'm waiting for the pony. Get the joke. Anyway. And so I was just quiet, and I moved into it, and it's this is making me think this, which is opening me up to this, which is the revelation of this. Now the issue didn't change, but it blessed me, and I changed. I'm different. Sometimes when we're just going along and everything's great and we're sitting on our bed or our prayer mat or whatever and we're going, and everything's all perfect. Well, guess what? That's okay. But it's different when we can prove it in the midst of human conditions. And human conditions pull stuff out of us that is amazing, that we prove these ideas to ourselves. We prove that we're strong. We prove that we're capable. We prove that we're wise. We prove that we're loving. We prove that our peace passes understanding. Otherwise, it's just a myth that only happens when we're in the right condition and it's sunny outside. Yay. So I want you to just take a breath and play with me here. And let us not judge God's ability to make a way where there seems like there is no way, just because we haven't been able to figure it out yet. See, don't bring God down to your level. Let God bring you up to its level. So think of a problem. Close your eyes, think of the problem, move inside yourself, and ask, what might this problem be drawing out of me? Who would I be so that this problem was a no thing? Who would I be? How do I have to be to see this problem in relationship to God's power? What is this bringing out of me? To know that is to be blessed. And you might even be given a solution. A solution might pop up in your head, or it might be delivered to you somehow. For God will make a way where there had been no way. And then we walk forward with great faith and anticipation, the deliverance of this new assumption. So what if we moved up the ladder of inference, and when we had a problem, we assume the best will happen out of it? We assume the best. The other thing that I want to say is to assume that you are here. If you are here, it's because you're a winner. You've all had to go through things. You've gone through a lot of things. Overcome, 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 overcome. That's what we do. But a lot of us say it this way: I had to overcome, instead of I overcame. See the difference? It's like this. It's like if you're watching a play, it's not what they say, how they say it. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Boy, I had to overcome so much when I was young. Or, I overcame a lot when I was young. I mean, as Andrea knows, I was born in Springfield. I overcame a lot. I mean, my grandmother used to say to me when I was bad, we're going to give you back to the Indians. I mean, come on. And I was thinking, that would be fun. Wow, they rode horses. You guys, what are you telling yourself? I'm going to paraphrase, I'm pretty sure it's Richard Bach who wrote Illusions, but in essence, if you're here, it's because God's not done with you yet. Everything that you went through is to prepare you for what you can do. And so celebrate what you went through, because I bet it made you stronger. Because it didn't kill you. You are here, right? And then see the challenges and what you overcome as evidence that you are loved by life and life needs you. If you're going to infer something, infer that because you're here, life needs you. The gifts you bring, the skills you bring, the stories you tell. You are important in the grand scheme of things. You know, because some of us like, well, you know, no, you're important. You are important, and I know that because you're here, not in this room, but you're alive, you're walking the planet. So, let's just take a deep breath and do some internal work. And if you choose, I'd love for you to let the Spirit of Truth reveal your own original goodness. Because there's not a baby born on earth that people don't look at and say, oh, sweet baby. You are that sweet baby. Nobody picks up their child, their grandchild, their niece, their nephew, their neighbor's kid, and says, oh, you little sinner, you. we see that sweetness. That's still us. Let that be the evidence that you build your ladder of inference off of. That the first rung is, I am an expression of the divine. I come to this earth trailing clouds of glory. And within me is the spark of remembrance that that which I seek is within me. And that I can overcome and overcome and overcome and overcome because I have. I am a winner because I have won. And I am loved because I love myself. And so imagine that from this day on, you assume that you are just remembering your divinity. That you are a human being who is remembering how divine, how beautiful, how magnificent, how loved, how precious, how perfect you are in the mind of the universe. That you're here on purpose because God don't make no junk. Let that be the ladder that you climb upon. And as you get up high enough, you see that everyone else is an expression of that life. And everyone else is just remembering that life. And everyone else is a blessing on the earth. And everyone else may have forgotten, but the more we remember, the more others will as well. Let's imagine that. And so it is.